My parents chose my half-sister over me for the family business, until she signed the papers that made me owner. My name is Chloe Powell, and at 29, I never imagined that watching my half-sister sign what she thought were routine business documents would be the moment I finally claimed what was rightfully mine. For 15 years, I'd watched my parents build their empire around Madison, their golden child, while treating me like an unpaid intern in my own family's company. Last Tuesday, as Madison smugly scrawled her signature across the transfer papers, believing she was securing her position as CEO, she had no idea she was actually signing over complete ownership to me. The look on my parents' faces when their lawyer read the fine print will haunt their dreams forever. Before I tell you how years of careful planning led to this sweet moment of justice, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been the overlooked sibling who had to fight for recognition in your own family. Powell & Associates Financial Services wasn't just a business to me. It was supposed to be my birthright. My father, David Powell, started the company when I was 8 years old, building it from a one-man accounting practice in our basement to a thriving financial consulting firm with offices across 3 states. I grew up sorting files, answering phones during summer breaks, and listening to him explain investment strategies over dinner. "Someday, Chloe," he'd say, ruffling my hair, "this will all be yours to run." I believed him completely, dedicating my teenage years to learning every aspect of the business while my friends were at the mall. But everything changed when I turned 16 and my father remarried. Linda brought Madison into our lives, a spoiled 12-year-old who immediately became the center of my father's universe. Where I had earned praise through hard work and genuine interest in the business, Madison charmed her way into his heart with tears, tantrums, and carefully calculated displays of helplessness. My stepmother Linda was a master manipulator, constantly reminding my father that Madison needed extra support because she'd grown up without a stable father figure, unlike his privileged daughter, who'd had him all to herself for 16 years. I'll never forget the Christmas when I was 17, excitedly presenting my father with a detailed business plan I'd spent months preparing for expanding our services into retirement planning. I'd researched market trends, analyzed competitor pricing, and even contacted potential clients. As I explained my proposal, Madison interrupted with crocodile tears, claiming she felt left out because she didn't understand business stuff. Within minutes, my presentation was forgotten as Dad and Linda comforted her, promising to take her shopping for a car the next day because she'd been so patient with all our business talk. My business plan ended up in the trash, and Madison got a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday 6 months later. The pattern continued through college. I earned my degree in business administration while working part-time at the firm, graduating summa cum laude and returning home ready to take on significant responsibilities. Madison, meanwhile, changed majors 3 times, barely graduated with a communications degree, and showed no interest in the family business beyond the lifestyle it provided. Yet when it came time to assign roles, she was given the title of creative director for our marketing efforts. Despite having no experience or qualifications, I was named operations assistant, essentially a glorified secretary position despite my education and years of hands-on experience. For years, I swallowed my frustration and continued working twice as hard for half the recognition. I brought in new clients, streamlined our processes, and even covered for Madison's mistakes when her creative marketing campaigns backfired spectacularly. Each success I achieved was either attributed to team effort or credited to Madison's vision. When I proposed new service offerings that generated significant revenue, Madison would somehow get mentioned in the company newsletter as the inspiration behind the ideas. My stepmother Linda had convinced my father that building up Madison's confidence was crucial for family harmony, and that I, being naturally gifted, didn't need the same level of encouragement. The breaking point came during our quarterly board meeting last October. I had prepared a comprehensive presentation outlining how my client acquisition strategies had increased our revenue by 42% over the previous year. The conference room was filled with our senior partners, all of whom had witnessed my contributions firsthand. As I clicked through slides showing concrete data, profit margins, and client testimonials specifically praising my work, I felt confident that my efforts would finally receive proper recognition. Madison sat at the opposite end of the table, scrolling through her phone and occasionally sighing dramatically. When I finished my presentation, the room erupted in impressed murmurs. Partner after partner congratulated me on the exceptional results. For once, I thought, my father would have to acknowledge that I was the driving force behind our recent success. That's when Linda spoke up. "This is exactly the kind of collaborative effort that makes our family business so special," she announced, her voice dripping with manufactured pride. Madison and Chloe working together, each contributing their unique strengths, Madison's creative vision and people skills combined with Chloe's attention to detail. It's a perfect partnership. I stared at her in disbelief. Madison hadn't contributed a single idea to any of the initiatives I'd presented. In fact, 3 of the major clients I'd secured had specifically requested that she not be involved in their accounts after her unprofessional behavior during initial meetings. But before I could object, Madison suddenly perked up, putting her phone away and smiling broadly. "Oh yes," Madison chimed in sweetly. "Chloe is so good at handling all the paperwork and number crunching. I focus more on the big picture and relationship building. We make a great team." The way she said paperwork made my role sound like data entry rather than strategic financial planning. My father beamed with pride, looking between his 2 daughters like he'd created some kind of business dynasty. "That's what I love to hear," he said warmly. Family businesses thrive when everyone plays to their strengths. Madison, your people skills have been instrumental in maintaining client relationships. And Chloe, your analytical mind keeps us profitable. I wanted to scream. The people skills he was praising had actually driven away 2 major clients in the past 6 months. I had personally had to smooth over Madison's mistakes, offering discounted services to prevent those clients from taking their business elsewhere. But somehow, in the twisted narrative Linda had constructed, Madison's incompetence was being reframed as leadership potential, while my actual leadership was reduced to being a good support system. After the meeting, Linda cornered me in my office. "I hope you understand why it's important for Madison to receive equal credit," she said, closing the door behind her. "Your father needs to see that both his daughters are capable leaders. Madison has been struggling with confidence issues, and feeling overshadowed by your natural abilities isn't helping her development." "My natural abilities?" I repeated incredulously. "Linda, these results didn't happen naturally. I worked 70-hour weeks, traveled to 15 cities, and personally negotiated every single one of these contracts. Madison contributed nothing." Linda's expression hardened. "That attitude is exactly the problem, Chloe. This company succeeds because we function as a family unit. Your individual achievements mean nothing if they come at the expense of family harmony. Madison is David's daughter just as much as you are, and she deserves equal opportunities to prove herself." "Then let her prove herself through her own work," I shot back. "Don't give her credit for mine." Linda stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Let me be very clear about something. David and I have been discussing the future leadership of this company. Madison shows tremendous potential for growth, while you've become increasingly difficult to work with. Your competitive attitude and inability to share credit doesn't reflect the collaborative leadership style we need going forward." The threat was unmistakable. Linda wasn't just stealing credit for my work. She was positioning me as a problem that needed to be solved. I realized in that moment that no amount of success would ever be enough, because Linda would always find a way to diminish my contributions while elevating Madison's. The family business I'd dedicated my life to building was being systematically stolen from me, one false narrative at a time. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the partnership agreement I'd signed when I officially joined the company after college. Something Linda had said nagged at me, the way she'd emphasized Madison being David's daughter just as much as you are. I pulled out my laptop and began researching business law, corporate governance, and partnership structures. What I discovered would change everything. The research I conducted that night revealed something that made my blood run cold. According to our company's partnership structure, Madison had been quietly added as a future partner when she turned 21, with the understanding that she would assume an ownership stake upon demonstrating readiness for leadership responsibilities. The documents, which I'd never seen before, had been filed during a period when I was traveling extensively for client meetings. Linda had orchestrated the timing perfectly, but the most shocking discovery came when I dug deeper into the corporate filings. Madison's partnership track wasn't just about future ownership. It included immediate voting rights on major company decisions and the authority to make changes to our client service agreements. Essentially, she had been given power over the very clients I'd worked so hard to secure, despite having no qualifications or experience in financial consulting. I realized Linda's long-term strategy wasn't just about family favoritism. It was a calculated takeover. By positioning Madison as the collaborative, people-focused leader while painting me as difficult and individualistic, Linda was building a case for pushing me out entirely. The quarterly meeting where she'd stolen credit for my work wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a systematic campaign to rewrite the company's narrative with Madison as the driving force behind our success. Over the next few weeks, I began documenting everything. I saved emails where Madison asked me to handle her client relationships because she didn't understand their needs. I recorded phone calls where clients specifically requested to work only with me, expressing frustration with Madison's unprofessional communication style. I gathered financial records showing the exact revenue impact of each initiative I'd led, cross-referenced with dates proving Madison's absence from all related meetings and negotiations. The evidence painted a clear picture. While I was generating millions in revenue and building the company's reputation, Madison was actively damaging client relationships and creating costly mistakes that I was forced to fix. Yet the official company records, thanks to Linda's manipulation, credited Madison with collaborative leadership while describing my role as operational support. During this investigation, I made another crucial discovery. My father's original partnership agreement from when he founded the company included provisions for succession that Linda and Madison weren't aware of. The documents clearly stated that operational control would transfer to the partner demonstrating the highest level of client satisfaction, revenue generation, and strategic leadership. By objective measures, I wasn't just the obvious successor. I was legally entitled to assume control based on performance metrics. But Linda had been clever. The documents she'd filed for Madison's partnership contained language that would override the original succession clause if Madison was formally recognized as the primary client relationship manager. All she needed was my father's signature on paperwork acknowledging Madison's leadership role in client services. Linda had been maneuvering toward this moment for months, waiting for the right opportunity to present the papers as a routine administrative update. The opportunity came during our annual company retreat in early December. Linda had planned the weekend as a celebration of our most successful year ever, which was true, thanks entirely to my efforts. The agenda included team-building activities, strategic planning sessions, and what Linda described as important paperwork updates to reflect our current organizational structure. I knew this was it. Linda was going to use the retreat's celebratory atmosphere to get my father to sign documents that would effectively hand control of the company to Madison. All the evidence I'd gathered, all the work I'd done, would become irrelevant once Madison had legal authority over client relationships and company decisions. I had to act first. That's when I reached out to Marcus Chen, a corporate attorney I'd met through one of my clients. When I explained the situation and showed him the partnership documents, his expression grew increasingly serious. "Chloe," he said after reviewing everything, "what Linda is doing could constitute corporate fraud if she's misrepresenting Madison's contributions to gain control of the business. But more importantly, based on these original partnership terms and your documented performance, you have grounds to assume controlling interest in the company." Marcus explained that the succession clause my father had written was ironclad. It didn't require his approval or acknowledgement. It was automatically triggered when objective performance criteria were met. The financial records I'd gathered proved beyond any doubt that I had exceeded every metric outlined in the original agreement. "You don't need permission to claim what's already legally yours," Marcus told me. "You just need to file the proper paperwork." Working with Marcus, I prepared a comprehensive legal package that included everything: the original partnership agreement with its succession provisions, 3 years of financial records proving my performance, documented evidence of Madison's lack of contribution, and testimony from clients praising my work while expressing concerns about Madison's professionalism. The package concluded with a formal notice of ownership transition based on the partnership's original terms. The plan was simple but devastating. At the company retreat, when Linda inevitably presented her documents for my father to sign, I would present my own legal filing. While she thought she was securing Madison's future control of the company, I would be claiming my rightful ownership based on terms my father himself had established years earlier. The very celebration of our successful year would become the venue for revealing exactly who had created that success. But I had one more card to play, something that would make the revelation even more satisfying. Through my client network, I'd learned that Madison had been telling people outside the company that she was already running Powell and Associates, claiming credit for our recent growth and even suggesting that she was mentoring me as I learned the business. She'd positioned herself as the next generation of leadership to potential clients and industry contacts, setting herself up to take full credit for everything I'd built. So I invited some of those contacts to attend our retreat's closing presentation, which Linda had described as a celebration of collaborative leadership and family business values. These were people who had heard Madison's claims firsthand, and who would witness the truth about who really controlled the company's success. As the retreat weekend approached, I felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. After years of watching my work be diminished and my contributions stolen, I was finally going to reclaim what was mine. Linda and Madison had no idea that their carefully planned takeover was about to backfire spectacularly. The documents Madison would sign, thinking she was securing her position as CEO, would actually be acknowledging my ownership of the company they thought they were stealing. The Friday afternoon of our retreat, as we gathered in the conference room of the luxury resort Linda had booked for the occasion, I watched my father and stepmother exchange meaningful glances. The trap was set, the guests were arriving, and Linda was about to discover that sometimes the person you underestimate the most is the one who holds all the real power. The retreat's opening dinner felt like a carefully choreographed performance where I was the only one who knew the script was about to change. Linda had invited several industry colleagues and potential partners, positioning the event as a showcase of Powell and Associates' collaborative leadership model. She and Madison worked the room like a well-practiced team, with Linda introducing Madison as our rising star and future CEO, while Madison smiled demurely and accepted congratulations for the company's record-breaking year. I watched from across the room as Madison spoke with James Morrison, a senior partner from one of our competitor firms, telling him how she'd revolutionized our client acquisition strategy and was excited about the innovative direction she was taking the company. The irony was perfect. She was taking credit for my work in front of the very people who would witness her losing everything the next day. My father stood with Linda, beaming with pride as colleagues praised him for raising such accomplished daughters. Madison has really found her calling in business development, he told Robert Hayes from the Regional Business Association. And Chloe provides excellent operational support. They complement each other perfectly. The casual dismissal of my role as mere operational support no longer stung. Tomorrow, everyone would learn exactly who had been supporting whom. Saturday morning's strategic planning session proceeded according to Linda's script. She presented charts showing our revenue growth, client satisfaction scores, and market expansion, all results of my work, but cleverly framed as team achievements with Madison's leadership vision prominently featured. Madison played her part perfectly, speaking confidently about our strategic initiatives and the innovative approaches we've implemented. During the lunch break, Marcus Chen arrived as my invited guest, ostensibly there to discuss potential legal services for our expanding business. Linda welcomed him warmly, eager to impress another professional contact. She had no idea he was carrying the documents that would end her charade. The afternoon session was dedicated to organizational updates and future planning. Linda stood at the front of the room, a stack of papers in her hands, addressing our assembled team and guests. Before we discuss our exciting plans for next year, she announced, we have some important administrative updates that reflect our current leadership structure. She gestured to Madison, who rose gracefully and moved to stand beside her. As many of you know, Madison has been instrumental in our recent success, taking on increasing responsibility for client relationships and strategic direction. Today, we're formalizing her role as Executive Vice President of Client Services, with operational authority over our key accounts and business development initiatives. My father nodded approvingly as Linda continued. These documents simply update our corporate structure to reflect the reality of how our business operates, with Madison as our primary client relationship manager and strategic leader. She handed Madison a pen and gestured to the signature line. This is really just a formality to bring our paperwork in line with your actual responsibilities. Madison smiled confidently and signed her name with a flourish, clearly enjoying the public recognition. She passed the documents to my father, who added his signature without reading the fine print, exactly as Linda had planned. The room applauded politely as Linda announced that refreshments would be served while they finalized the paperwork. That's when I stood up. Actually, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, before we celebrate, there's another document that needs to be reviewed. I nodded to Marcus, who rose and approached the front of the room carrying his briefcase. Linda's expression shifted from confident to confused. Chloe, what's this about? We're in the middle of an important organizational update. Exactly, I replied, walking to join Marcus at the front of the room. And organizational updates require complete accuracy. I turned to address the assembled group, making eye contact with the industry colleagues who had heard Madison's claims about running the company. I'd like everyone to understand exactly who has been responsible for our recent success. Marcus opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick document folder. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced in his professional attorney voice, I'm here to present documentation regarding the actual ownership and operational control of Powell and Associates Financial Services, based on the company's original partnership agreement and verified performance metrics. The room fell silent. Linda's face had gone pale, while Madison looked confused but not yet alarmed. My father frowned, clearly not understanding what was happening. According to the partnership agreement established when David Powell founded this company, Marcus continued, operational control transfers automatically to the partner who demonstrates the highest levels of client satisfaction, revenue generation, and strategic leadership over a 3-year performance period. He opened the folder and began displaying charts and documents. Our analysis shows that over the past 3 years, Chloe Powell has personally generated 78% of the company's revenue, maintained a 96% client satisfaction rating, and secured every major contract that has driven the company's growth. Madison's confident smile was fading as she began to understand the implications. Linda stepped forward aggressively. "This is completely inappropriate," she snapped. "We're in the middle of a celebration, not a business audit." "Actually," Marcus replied calmly, "this is exactly the appropriate time since legal ownership transitions are effective immediately upon filing." He turned to the next page in his presentation. Based on objective performance criteria established in the original partnership agreement, Chloe Powell became the majority owner of Powell & Associates as of 3 months ago. The documents Madison just signed weren't transferring authority to her. They were acknowledging Chloe's existing ownership and operational control. The room erupted in murmurs as the implications sank in. Madison stared at the papers she'd signed, finally understanding that she'd just formally recognized my authority over the company she thought she was inheriting. Linda grabbed my father's arm, whispering frantically in his ear, but he looked stunned and speechless. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, clearly enjoying the dramatic revelation, "the company's recent success that we're celebrating today was achieved entirely through Chloe's leadership. The revenue growth, client acquisitions, and strategic initiatives that have been attributed to collaborative team effort were actually the result of her individual contributions, as documented in these client testimonials and financial records." He displayed a series of quotes from our major clients, each one specifically praising my work and expressing concern about Madison's involvement in their accounts. James Morrison, who had been listening to Madison's claims the night before, read his own company's evaluation praising my exceptional strategic insight and professional competence, while noting that other team members appeared to lack necessary expertise. The weight of years of stolen credit and false narratives collapsed in a single moment. Madison sank into her chair, her face flushed with humiliation as the industry colleagues she'd been impressing realized she'd been lying about her role. Linda stood frozen, watching her carefully constructed plan implode in front of the very audience she'd assembled to witness Madison's triumph. My father finally found his voice. "Chloe, I don't understand. When did this happen? How did ownership transfer without my knowledge?" "It transferred when the performance criteria you established were met," I replied gently but firmly. "The partnership agreement you wrote 15 years ago was very clear about succession based on results. I've simply been documenting my qualifications while fulfilling the requirements you set." Marcus handed me the final document, a certificate of ownership that made my legal status unambiguous. "As of today," I announced to the room, "I am the majority owner and CEO of Powell & Associates Financial Services. Madison will need to report to me going forward, assuming she chooses to remain with the company in a capacity that matches her actual qualifications and contributions." The silence that followed was broken by applause from several of our clients who had witnessed Madison's incompetence firsthand. They were clearly relieved to know that the person who had actually been managing their accounts would continue to do so. The industry colleagues Linda had invited to witness Madison's elevation instead became witnesses to the truth about who really controlled the company's success. As the afternoon concluded and guests began to depart, Linda cornered me in the hallway outside the conference room. "You've destroyed this family," she hissed, her mask of maternal concern finally stripped away completely. "David will never forgive you for humiliating Madison like this." "I didn't humiliate Madison," I replied calmly. "I revealed the truth about her contributions. She humiliated herself by claiming credit for work she didn't do." "You planned this," Linda accused. "You deliberately set us up." "I documented my performance and claimed what I earned," I corrected. "The fact that your plan backfired isn't my fault. It's the natural consequence of building a scheme on lies." Madison appeared beside her mother, tears streaming down her face. "Chloe, how could you do this to me? I thought we were family." Looking at my half-sister, the golden child who had never earned anything she'd been given, I felt something unexpected, not anger or satisfaction, but a kind of sad clarity about who she really was and who I had become despite her treatment of me. "We are family, Madison," I said quietly, "and family means that your success should be based on your own efforts, not on stealing credit from others. If you want to continue working here, you'll need to actually contribute to the company instead of just claiming credit for what I build." The conversation ended there because there was nothing left to say. Linda and Madison had spent years constructing a false narrative about leadership and contribution, and reality had finally caught up with their fiction. The company I had built through countless hours of work and sacrifice was finally, legally, and publicly mine. In the months that followed, the transformation of Powell & Associates was remarkable. Without the need to constantly cover for Madison's mistakes or have my strategies filtered through Linda's manipulation, our revenue increased by another 30%. Several clients who had been considering leaving due to Madison's unprofessional behavior renewed their contracts enthusiastically once they knew I was officially in charge. Madison chose to leave the company entirely, accepting a position with a marketing firm where her communications degree was actually relevant to her responsibilities. Linda remained bitter, but had no legal recourse, since everything I'd done was based on the partnership agreement my father himself had written. Our family relationship remained strained, but the business, the thing I dedicated my life to building, was finally under the control of the person who had actually created its success. My father struggled initially with accepting that the daughter he'd underestimated had outperformed the one he'd favored, but the objective evidence was impossible to deny. Over time, he began to recognize that his original instincts about my potential had been correct, and that Linda's manipulation had clouded his judgment for far too long. 6 months after the retreat, as I sat in my office, now officially labeled CEO, reviewing our quarterly reports, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The years of having my work dismissed and my contributions stolen had been painful, but they had also made me stronger, more determined, and ultimately more successful than I might have been without those challenges. Sometimes the people who try to diminish you end up proving your strength. Sometimes the family that overlooks you forces you to become so accomplished that you can't be ignored. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't getting even. It's succeeding so completely that the truth becomes impossible to deny. The documents Madison had signed, thinking she was securing her future, had instead secured mine. And every day as I led the company I'd built, I was reminded that true leadership isn't given. It's earned through hard work, proven through results, and recognized when the facts can no longer be hidden behind false narratives and family politics. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have supported you most, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by their recognition, but by your own achievements. Keep building, keep proving yourself, and eventually, the truth will speak louder than any lie they've told about your potential.